He set the whiskey on my table like a peace treaty, and my phone lit up with 5 words that saved my life. "Grandpa, don't drink it." The amber in the bottle caught the kitchen light and threw it back at me. Warm as a fireplace, false as a salesman's smile. I could still feel Evan's hug on my shoulders, too tight, too long, as if he was tucking me into a story he'd already rehearsed. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from. "Single malt," he'd said, thumbing the label. "You deserve something good, Dad." He left fast, the way men do when they've pushed a plan into motion and don't want to watch the aftermath. The door clicked, the house breathed, and Dorchester winter pressed its face against my window. I reached into the bag and found a narrow slip folded under the tissue. "Somerville Wine and Spirits. 119, 6:11 p.m., Monday, Nov 17. Under that, softer paper, edges crumpled. "Elder Care Planning. Initial Consult. 2,800. Bill to Jack O'Rourke, Neponset Ave." I hadn't called anyone. May's name wasn't on it. I felt the first cold finger trace my spine. The oven timer dinged. For a tray of roasted potatoes I'd probably oversalted. I didn't move. The bottle looked honest from a foot away and guilty up close. I twisted the cap a quarter turn and lifted it to my nose. Sweet, yes, but not the sweet I knew from a Christmas nip. There was a syrup to it, like cough medicine, or the kind of liqueur that coats your mouth and asks no questions. I closed it carefully. The threads of the cap rasped like a warning. My phone buzzed again. "Noah, 7:42 p.m. Dad says it's a special bottle Bree picked. She told him it helps you sleep." Sleep. The word landed wrong in the room, like a chair with a short leg. I texted back one word. "Call," he whispered when he answered, the way a boy learns to when adults are careless within earshot. "Grandpa, she was on speaker earlier. I heard her ask if the old man took his nightcap yet. I hate that." She laughed. I pictured his room in Back Bay, posters, sneakers, calculus notebook dog-eared where he pretends to do homework. "Are you safe?" I asked. "I'm fine," he said. "Just don't drink it." I set the bottle on the far corner of the table and slid the gift receipt and the $2,800 bill beside it, like pieces on a board game that had turned serious. The house had been too quiet since May passed in August. Quiet used to mean peace. Lately it meant I could hear what I didn't want to. Pipes settling, my own breath, the part of my heart that didn't forgive easily. I pulled a ballpoint from the junk drawer and underlined the liquor store time, 6:11 p.m., then wrote YECP bill on the margin. My hands steadied when I wrote. That's a thing grief taught me. A pen is heavier than it looks. I took 3 photos, bottle, receipt, invoice. I dated the back of the receipt, Nov 17, and tucked it into the same drawer where May used to keep birthday cards. On the counter, the oven timer blinked 00 like an eye that had decided to stop watching. I turned it off, put on my coat, and stood in the doorway a full minute listening. A plan, even a messy one, was pushing up through the cracked pavement of my shock. I texted Noah. "Thank you. I'll handle it." Then I put the bottle in a clean grocery bag, tied it once, and set it out of reach on the highest shelf. Not today, not ever, not without proof. In the morning, I'd ask the pharmacist what sleep tastes like, and I'd call the bank to see what else moved while I was supposed to be sipping. Because gifts don't come with invoices. Traps do. I didn't sleep in my bed that night. I sat in the brown recliner by the window, the one that still smells faintly of May's lavender spray, and watched Dorchester turn itself off, house by house. The whiskey sat on the coffee table like a dare. I kept it in the grocery bag I'd tied, not neat, handles tucked under, as if neatness could make it harmless. I left the TV on mute to keep me company and listened to the radiator hiss like a cat at something I couldn't see. When you're 71 and widowed, midnight stretches. Thoughts stretch too, thin strips of worry that snap at 4 in the morning. I thought about the $2,800 elder care planning invoice. Who ordered it, who answered my phone to schedule it, who expected me to pay it. I thought about the way Evan hugged me and the way he wouldn't quite meet my eyes. I thought about the one time I let him keep the spare key after May's stroke because he said, "Dad, what if you fall?" That key used to hang on a little brass hook inside the hall closet. Lately, I hadn't seen it there. Just before dawn, I must have slept because the radiator hiss turned into the ocean in some dream, and then my phone alarm buzzed me back to my own life. 6:30 a.m. Tuesday, Nov 18, the grocery bag still on the coffee table. The knot still neat. I put on my old MBTA jacket, zipped it up all the way, and walked the 2 blocks to Duffy's pharmacy. Mr. Duffy was restocking a shelf with blood pressure cuffs, humming the oldies station. He looked up, and the way his face warmed told me he remembered May. "Morning, Jack," he said, soft. "You all right?" "Depends on your answer," I said, and I heard the thinness in my voice. I was the guy who used to climb into tunnels and fix things in the dark, with live lines humming over my head. This felt worse because the hum was inside my chest. "What does sleep taste like in whiskey?" I asked. "If you wanted to make someone drowsy." "Not sick, drowsy." He didn't blink. "Wrong suite," he said, and put a finger on a laminated page he keeps by the register for folks who ask the same kind of question in 10 different ways. Zolpidem, the big word printed at the top, side effects listed underneath in bullet points: dizziness, confusion, falls. "Comes in sublinguals and standard tablets," he said. "Either way, crushed up and slipped into something, it can taste off. People might not notice if they're not paying attention." "I pay attention," I said, and my voice was steady again. He nodded. "You want me to look at anything?" he asked. "Not yet," I said. "But thank you." I bought a box of quart-size zip bags and a roll of masking tape. He rang me up, printed a small receipt, 6:42, 6:48 a.m., and slid it across the counter. He placed his hand over mine for a second. The way men who don't do hugging say they're with you. Back home, I made tea, black, 2 sugars, and opened my banking app with the same dread you open a door that might be jammed from the other side. A banner at the top, red, not the usual blue. "We attempted to reach you regarding a home equity line of credit inquiry." I tapped through. 8:12 p.m., Nov 17, the same evening as the bottle. Underneath, a small note I had never authorized. "Authorized contact, Evan O'Rourke." I felt my face flush in a way that had nothing to do with the hot mug in my hand. I called the number they left. The woman on the line was patient, her keyboard tapping out a small march. I told her to freeze any new applications until I came in person, and to put a verbal password on my profile. She asked what word I wanted. I gave her the name of the first street May and I lived on. Nothing too clever, nothing someone could guess from Facebook. "You'll need this every time," she said. "Every time," I said back, and wrote it on an index card I'd only ever keep in my pocket. "We also have a note," she added, "that a pre-approval was queued at 8:31 p.m. last night." I could see the sequence in my mind, as if it were a train schedule. 6:11 purchase, 7:42 warning, 8:12 bank attempt, 8:31 pre-approval queued. Greed is punctual. I hung up and walked to the hall closet. The brass hook stared at me, empty. "Damn it," I said aloud to a house that pretends not to listen. I thought of Evan's hug again, the way he pressed his chest to mine like he was measuring my breath. I sat on the bench and held my head in my hands, and there it was, the collapse. Not for long, but enough to feel like falling through ice. May would have put her palm between my shoulders, right there at the base of the neck, and said, "Do the work, Jackie." The work wasn't vengeance. It was proof. I placed the whiskey on the kitchen table, took out one of the quart bags, and slid the bottle in like it was a rare book. I pulled a strip of masking tape and wrote, "Collected Nov 18, 7:12 a.m. kitchen," with my ballpoint. Chain of custody isn't just for TV. It's for old men who aren't ready to be anyone's fool. I took 3 photos with my phone against a white cutting board. Bottle in bag. The tape label. The receipt and the $2,800 invoice laid side by side. Each photo got its own caption in the Notes app. I saved them and backed them up to the cloud, which I don't fully trust but I use anyway. At 11:58 a.m., I dialed Attorney Kaplan. He picked up on the second ring, the way men do who live in their suits. "Jack," he said, voice like a metronome. I told him everything in fewer words than I thought I'd need. He didn't say poison. Lawyers keep their nouns clean. He said, "We're concerned about tampering and undue influence. Do not dispose of the bottle. Photograph, bag, and arrange a private lab test for contents. I'll text you an address. Get a receipt and keep a copy. And Jack, do you have any healthcare proxy naming Evan?" "No," I said, and heard something hollow in the word. "Not yet," he said. And that yet hung in the air like a spider you can't see, but know is somewhere above your head. He told me to gather what I already had, gift receipt, invoice, my phone screenshots, and start a timeline on paper. "Left side dates," he said, "right side actions. Use amounts and times. It forces the truth to sit still." After we hung up, I stood very still in the kitchen, palms flat on the table, and listened to the house breathe again. Then I made the first entries in a black and white composition notebook May had bought for grocery lists and never used. Nov 17, Evan brings single malt, 6:11 p.m. receipt. 7:42 p.m. Noah's text. Bank calls 8:12, pre-approval 8:31. Nov 18, bag bottle, 7:12 a.m. Duffy's visit 6:48 a.m. Kaplan call 11:58 a.m. Lab test pending. My hands shook a little at the start. The pen steadied them by the end. I poured the cold tea down the sink and brewed a fresh cup, then picked up the phone again. "Harridan Locksmiths," the woman answered. You do same-day Rickies?" I asked. "We do," she said. "We can be there by 3 p.m. I gave her the address on Neponset and felt the first small click of control slot into place. I put a sticky note on the closet door where the brass hook gaped. "Ricky today." Before the locksmith came, I took the grocery-bagged bottle and walked it 2 blocks to Bay State Diagnostics. The lab tech wore a blue polo and a patient face. "We can test for sedatives," he said. "You'll get a ticket with a reference number and today's date. Results in a day or 2. He watched me photograph the handoff. "You watch a lot of crime shows?" he asked, half grinning. "I worked 40 years under live voltage," I said. "I like things done by the book." I walked home the long way down Dorchester Ave, breathing the cold like medicine. And when I opened my door, I checked the brass hook again out of habit and shook my head at myself. The locksmith would be here soon. I put the composition notebook in the top drawer where May used to keep stamps and laid a ballpoint on top of it like a promise. Grief is heavy. Yes, suspicion is heavier, but a ledger balanced with dates and amounts that lifts some weight. By the time the locksmith's van eased to the curb at 3:12 p.m., my fear had moved over 1 seat to make room for something else, the part of me that fixes things in the dark. Tomorrow, I told myself, we follow the money and ask Somerville what they remember about bows and bottles. Tonight, we change the locks and sleep with the notebook on my chest. The locksmith came right on time, 3:15 p.m. Tuesday, Nova 18. Young guy, polite, didn't ask questions. He had a van full of blank keys and brass dust. When he turned the first cylinder on my front door, the sound was clean, like a zipper closing on a wound. He handed me 2 fresh keys, tagged them with a paper slip that read, "Job 4829, Harridan Locksmiths, 189, and said, "Keep one somewhere safe." "Toss the old ones?" I signed his invoice and made a photocopy before I even put it down. I wasn't paranoid anymore. I was documenting. After he left, I went to my kitchen drawer where May used to keep the stapler. I stapled the invoice to the second page of my composition notebook and wrote in neat black ink, Nov 18, 3:15 p.m., locks changed. Cost 189s, old key retired. There's something about writing things down that makes them real. The old Jack, the easygoing one, would have brushed this off. Maybe called Evan to clear the air, but that Jack was gone the day May's heartbeat flatlined in St. E's, the one left behind, was the man who used to trace wiring diagrams with a ruler until the current made sense. At 4:42 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was Noah again. His voice was hushed, like he was calling from inside a church. "Grandpa Bree's been posting weird stuff on her TikTok. She keeps saying she's making sleep tea." "Sleep tea?" I asked. "Yeah, little dropper bottles, like flavoring stuff, but she calls them sweet dreams. She showed amber drops falling into a mug and said, 'Just 1 capful and you'll rest forever.' I felt the breath leave my lungs. 'Can you send it to me?' I screen recorded it. I'll text it to you, but please don't tell Dad I told you. He's acting strange. Within seconds, my phone dinged. The clip played, Bree smiling at the camera, wearing that boutique owner grin. Behind her, a shelf lined with bottles that looked just like the one sitting bagged in my kitchen. Her caption read, "The perfect nightcap for restless minds." I didn't know TikTok from toasters, but I knew marketing when I saw it, and I knew intent when I heard it. That night, I went online and ordered a Ring doorbell camera. Pick up at Best Buy, Dorchester Ave. Order number 312889. I didn't wait for delivery. By 7:30 p.m. I was home again, kneeling by my front door, screwdriver in hand. The hum of the drill felt like an old friend. The light blinked blue, then solid white. Connected. I set the alerts for every motion, even the ones from squirrels. While I worked, the oven timer dinged again, though nothing was inside. I'd forgotten to turn it off after reheating soup. I left it be. That small, rhythmic sound was almost comforting, like May's breath used to be when she fell asleep before me. By 8:12 p.m., the camera caught its first clip. A delivery guy dropping off mailers. I saved the video, not because it mattered, but because it proved the thing worked. From now on, proof would be my pulse. At 9 p.m., I packed the whiskey bottle into a small box, wrapped it in a clean kitchen towel, and walked the 10 minutes to Bay State Diagnostics. The night air stung my face, but it cleared the fog from my head. Inside, the fluorescent lights hummed. A lab tech with C. Morgan on his badge looked at the bottle, then at me. "We'll test for sedatives," he said, sliding a form across the counter. I filled in name, Jack O'Rourke. Collected Nov 18, 9:28 p.m. Test, sedative compounds, ethanol base. He tore the bottom slip and handed it to me. "Keep this." Results in 24 hours. I took a photo of the handoff with my phone, the slip and his name badge visible. He raised an eyebrow. "Chain of custody?" he asked. I nodded. "Something like that." The walk home was quiet except for the crunch of frost under my shoes. Each streetlight felt like a checkpoint. I reached my porch, checked the new lock twice, and stood there for a moment looking at the empty sky. I thought about May again, how she'd tell me I was stubborn but thorough. Back inside, I opened my composition notebook and wrote on the next line, 9:28 p.m., bottle delivered to Bay State Diagnostics. Ticket B2906, photo taken. On the opposite page, I began drawing a 2-column chart. Left, dates. Right, actions and amounts. The first entry's already filled half a page. Nov 17, gift bottle, 6:11 p.m. receipt. Noah's text 7:42 p.m. HELOC attempt 8:12 p.m. Nov 18, Duffy's consult 6:42. Locksmith Reiki 189. Lab test deposit $60. Cash. Every number told a story. Every story could prove intent. At 10:14 p.m., I called Kaplan again, just to confirm the lab would qualify as an independent test. "It does," he said. "Take photos of the ticket, not the results when they arrive. Results can wait. The chain is what counts." I thanked him, and before hanging up, he said something I underlined later in the notebook. "Jack, revenge is just boundaries in legal clothing. Keep it clean." That line stayed with me. I went to the window, looked at the glow of Dorchester Ave in the distance, and realized the fear that had clung to me since last night was gone. What replaced it was steadier, colder, focus. I set the notebook on my nightstand beside my phone, left the Ring camera feed open, and fell asleep watching my own front door. Tomorrow, I'd visit Somerville Wine and Spirits. I'd find out who bought that bottle and what name they used on the tag. Because now I wasn't a grieving widower. I was a man keeping records. Wednesday, Nov 19th. The morning light came in flat and pale, like the city was tired of keeping secrets. I brewed coffee black and bitter the way May hated it and opened my notebook. Yesterday's entries stared back at me, neat lines of ink that somehow made the chaos manageable. I underlined the last one twice. Tomorrow, follow the money. I started at Eastern Harbour Credit Union, the small brick branch I've used since the early 80s. The tellers know me. I still bring them fudge every Christmas. Ms. Lynn, the manager, smiled as I stepped inside, but that smile faded when she saw my face. "Morning, Mr. O'Rourke. Everything okay?" "Not yet," I said. "But it will be." I slid my ID and my folder of receipts across the counter. "I need a fraud freeze and a call log printout," I said quietly. She frowned but didn't ask why, just turned to her computer. The printer hummed, and within a minute she handed me 3 stapled pages. "Here you go. You had 2 calls logged on the 17th, and 1 outbound authorization at 8:31 p.m. She hesitated. "That's the one that created the home equity pre-approval." I read the printout line by line. 8:12 p.m., inbound call to Jack. 8:19, outbound to authorized contact Evan. 8:31, Hellock pre-approval queued. There it was, Evan's name in ink, right between my breathing and their scheme. I initialed the bottom corner and asked her to add a verbal password for every future transaction. "Use Somerset," I said. "The first street May and I lived on when we had nothing but a folding table and her laugh." She typed it in, then stamped verified identity in red on the bottom of my copy. I folded it into my notebook and thanked her. My next stop was Somerville Wine and Spirits. The store was warm and smelled of cork and old wood. The manager, a man with a silver beard and a tired Red Sox cap, looked up when I walked in. "Help you find something?" "Yeah," I said, holding up the gift receipt. "Someone bought this bottle here Monday. It was tagged to me, Jack O'Rourke. You remember who made that sale?" He squinted, then nodded. "Yeah, I remember. Pretty bow cash sale. Lady had a tattoo on her wrist, small butterfly. Showed a name Evan on her phone to write on the card. The air in the shop seemed to thin. You still have the register copy?" He turned to the counter, flipped through a stack and slid me a duplicate gift receipt. There it was again, 6:11 p.m. November 17, Sat 19, Zadisa. Paid cash. I took a photo with today's newspaper beside it, dated Nov 19, and wrote in my notebook, "Gift confirmed, Brie tattoo butterfly. Evan name tag." When I got home, I found Rosa, my next-door neighbor, sitting on her porch steps tying her shoelaces after her hospital shift. She's one of those people who never look surprised, just steady. I told her everything. The bottle, the text, the lab, the HELOC, all of it. She listened with her nurse face on. Neutral, kind, precise. "If they're playing with sedatives," she said, "don't confront alone." She pulled a printed symptom checklist from her bag and underlined 3 words in blue pen: confusion, falls, memory gaps. "You drink enough of that, Jack. They could make you look like a confused old man overnight. That's what scares me more than the poison." Her words hit harder than anything yet. It wasn't just about money. It was about control, the kind that erases a man before he's gone. I made her a cup of coffee and for the first time in days didn't drink mine alone. When she left, she touched my shoulder and said, "Keep your head. Truth takes its time, but it wins." At 4:02 p.m., I got an email from Kaplan's paralegal subject line, "Draft affidavit, Noah O'Rourke." I opened the PDF. It was simple, clean, on Nov 17, 2025, at approximately 7:40 p.m. I texted my grandfather, Jack O'Rourke, warning him not to consume a bottle of whiskey gifted by my father and his fiancée, Brie Tisdale. I'd overheard them discuss the nightcap earlier that day. No dramatics, just facts, the kind of truth that sticks. We scheduled Noah to sign it in Kaplan's office Friday, November 21, 4 p.m. Kaplan also suggested filing a temporary protective order if we found tampering confirmed. "The law likes clean lines," he said. "We'll make them." That evening I heated leftovers and watched the shadows from the streetlights crawl across my curtains. Then the Ring app pinged, my first real alert. Motion at 9:13 p.m. The clip showed a figure in a hood trying the doorknob. A hand tugged once, twice, then retreated. The timestamp burned itself into my brain. 9:13 p.m., Nov 19. I saved the video, exported it twice, one to my laptop, one to a flash drive, and backed it up to the cloud. The sound on the clip was faint, but there, a whisper that could have been anything. Maybe a name, maybe a curse. I wrote one more line in the notebook before bed. Locks changed. Door tested. Held firm. The plan wasn't revenge anymore, it was armor. Every document, every clip, every witness was a plate of steel on the chest of a man who refused to be buried alive in someone else's greed. Tomorrow, I'd have the lab results. Tomorrow, I'd know what they meant by sleep. Thursday, Nov 20. I was slicing toast when the phone rang. Unknown number. I almost let it go, but something told me to answer. "Mr. O'Rourke?" a voice said, young and cautious. "This is Bay State Diagnostics. We have your lab results." My grip on the butter knife tightened. "Go ahead," I said. "There's ethanol, as expected," the tech said, "but also zolpidem tartrate in a concentration well above therapeutic use. We're required to note it's inconsistent with prescription formulation." He could have just said, "Someone tried to drug you." The polite words made it worse. I thanked him, hung up, and stared at the countertop where May used to spread her crossword puzzles. The wood grain blurred. By noon I was at Bay State's front desk, the lab report in a thin envelope. I signed the release, asked for 2 copies and folded one into my notebook. The page crackled when I smoothed it flat. Sound of truth. Thin but sharp. Next stop, Duffy's Pharmacy. Mr. Duffy was behind the counter again, sorting receipts with a pair of reading glasses perched on his nose. "Jack," he said, "you look like you've got news." "I do," I said quietly. "I need your register journal for Nova 16 around 5:30 p.m. He blinked but didn't argue. He flipped through a thick ledger, finger landing on a line item. 5:42 p.m. 2 boxes, Zolpidem 10 million, cash sale, discount card ID, B. Tisdale. A slow exhale left my chest. "You remember who bought it?" I asked. "Woman, maybe early 30s. Butterfly tattoo on her wrist, that same damn tattoo." He didn't pry. He just tore off a transaction stub, showing the date, time, and price. No personal medical data, just the purchase details. He stapled a small copy of the generic drug label to it. "I can't tell you more," he said softly, "but you didn't hear this from me." I placed a $10 bill on the counter. "You'll take that for coffee," I said. He shook his head, but I left it anyway. Back outside, the cold Boston air bit hard at my fingers. I took a photo of the stub beside my watch, 12:37 p.m., and wrote on the back, "Proof, Bree purchased sedative Nerve 16 at 3 p.m. I sat across from Attorney Kaplan again in his office near Copley Square. He had the calm of a surgeon before an incision. I spread the papers in front of him. Lab report, receipts, call logs, gift slip, pharmacy stub. He scanned each one, eyebrows tightening but never lifting. "Mr. O'Rourke," he said at last, "this isn't suspicion anymore. This is a case." He built a packet right there, plastic sleeves, chronological order, each document labeled with a date and source. "This goes to Eastern Harbor Credit Union today," he said, "for an official fraud alert and HELOC cease order." He drafted a notice to the Registry of Deeds to flag my property against unauthorized liens. "And this," he said, tapping the top page, "is the kind of evidence that closes a door before it's opened." We also moved Noah's affidavit up. He'd already signed it. His mother dropped him off earlier than planned. The boy didn't want to say much, but his eyes told the story twice. Kaplan notarized the document and handed me a copy. "Guard this like cash," he said. "By evening, my packet had grown thick enough to hurt when you held it wrong." I went home, laid everything out on the table, and watched the sunlight fade off the paper until it all looked gold. At 8:15 p.m., my phone rang again. Evan. "Hey, Dad," he said, syrup smooth. "How's the bottle treating you?" "Sleeping any better?" I could hear Bree's voice faint in the background. Music, laughter, something about Sunday dinner. "I haven't opened it," I said. Silence. The kind that's more dangerous than yelling. Then a chuckle. "You should. It's good stuff. We'll come by this weekend, help you sort your papers." "That'd be great," I said. "Let's make it Sunday, December 27th, family dinner. Bring Bree." "Perfect," he said. He had no idea he'd just booked his own confession. When the call ended, I circled deck 22 in my notebook 3 times. The red ink bled through the page like a warning siren. I didn't feel fear anymore. I felt timing. The oven timer dinged from the kitchen, though nothing was cooking. That sound again? May's old reminder that every plan, no matter how painful, has its perfect moment. I wrote the last line of the day, underlined twice, Deck 22, the table. That night, I sat in the recliner again, the packet resting heavy on my lap. Outside, Dorchester wind rattled the porch flag. Inside, everything was still. Proof stacked neatly, camera watching, locks sealed, will ready. This wasn't just about saving my house anymore. It was about reclaiming the dignity they thought age had softened. By the time the clock hit 11, I had one truth left on my tongue. The reveal needed a dinner, and this time, I'd be the one serving it cold. December came down on Boston like a grey curtain. The sidewalks were slick with half-melted snow, the kind that looks clean until you step in it. Thanksgiving passed quietly. I roasted a chicken for myself, set a place for May, and left the chair empty. I didn't say grace. I just whispered, not yet. The days that followed, Deck 1 through 15, were for tightening bolts. Every morning I reviewed my ledger, locks rekeyed, accounts frozen, evidence logged. I wasn't counting days anymore. I was counting proofs. Kaplan called on Deck 2. "We'll file a notice of intent to amend your trust," he said. "The new draft moves primary benefit to Noah's education fund and a small scholarship in May's name." He paused. "We'll leave Evan a conditional $1 symbolic," I smiled. Sometimes symbols do more damage than dollars. Each week Kaplan updated me. The paperwork moved like a slow, deliberate tide. Letters to the Registry of Deeds, notifications to Eastern Harbor, a brief to the Attorney General's Elder Protection Unit, filed just in case. Every seal, every signature was another brick in the wall around my life. Then came Thursday, Deck 18. Dorchester was wearing its winter coat of salt and exhaust when my phone pinged. A ring alert. I opened it, and there she was, Bree, standing on my porch in her long camel coat, a manila envelope clutched to her chest. The camera mic caught her voice, faint under the wind. "He'll drink it at dinner." Then she knelt, slid the envelope under the mat, and walked away like she was leaving a note for Santa. I didn't touch it for a full hour. I sat in my kitchen, staring through the window until the snow turned to drizzle. When I finally picked it up, my fingers were trembling, not from fear but from confirmation. Inside was a pre-filled healthcare proxy, dated Deck 17, naming Evan O'Rourke as my medical decision-maker. My supposed signature bled across the bottom, wrong slant, wrong pressure, wrong why. They'd copied my handwriting from the old will Kaplan had witnessed. I spread the paper under my desk lamp and photographed every inch, signature close-ups, page corners, even the faint coffee ring on the margin. The date told me all I needed. They were preparing for the moment after the toast. That night, I sat at my table with the forged proxy, the lab report, and the pharmacy stub laid out like a lineup. I wasn't shaking anymore. Revenge, when it's righteous, feels like still water before a storm. At 8:30 p.m., I called Noah. He picked up on the first ring. "Grandpa." "Yeah, kiddo. I need your help for dinner." "Dinner?" "December 22nd. I want you sitting next to me. When I squeeze your hand, you'll read a message. Just your text from that night. Nothing more." He hesitated, then said, "Okay." Next, I called Rosa. "I need a favor," I said. "You still have one of those portable blacklight pens from work?" "I do. Bring it to dinner." "I'll explain later." She didn't even ask why. That's the kind of neighbor she is. Kaplan was the last call. "I'll be there," he said. 2 houses down, in my car. "Text me if they show up, and I'll walk in when you give the signal." "What signal?" "You'll know when the truth's ready to stand up." The next day, Deck 19, I drove to Somerville Wine and Spirits and bought a second bottle, the exact same brand and size, but sealed, untampered. I kept the receipt in my wallet, dated and signed by the manager. That was the trick. 2 bottles, 1 truth. Evan would think he'd won. I'd be holding evidence instead of poison. By Deck 21, I was setting the table. I took out May's blue rim plates, the ones she loved for holidays, and polished them until I could see my reflection in the glaze. I set her name card at the head of the table, not out of grief, but as a witness. The smell of rosemary and lemon filled the house, the scent of my marriage and the scent of my fight. I walked through the house one last time like a general checking his lines. Ring camera angled perfectly. Packet of documents sealed in a folder on the counter. Untampered bottle on the sideboard, cap unbroken. Forged proxy folded neatly in my jacket pocket. The oven timer dinged once, sharp and clean. That was my cue. Tomorrow they'd walk through that door, believing they were serving me my last drink, but I'd be serving them something far stronger. The truth, under light. Sunday, December 22nd, 6 thus p.m. The house smelled like rosemary and lemon, May's signature scent for holidays. It used to mean warmth, laughter, the sound of her slippers sliding on the tile. Tonight it meant strategy. Every plate, every fork, every folded napkin was part of my defense. I stood by the stove, wearing her old apron, the one that said, "Kiss the cook," even though no one had in years. The untampered bottle I'd bought yesterday gleamed on the counter. The other, the one Bree had gifted, sat sealed in a labeled bag beside the folder of evidence. Proof was ready, dinner was bait. At 5:58 p.m., the Ring camera pinged. Evan and Bree on the porch, smiles rehearsed. He wore a new coat, she a crimson dress, both acting like they were walking into a Hallmark special. I let them in. The moment Bree's heels crossed my floor, the air changed. Sweet perfume and deceit layered over my home like smoke. "Dad," Evan said, voice too bright. "Place smells amazing." Bree brought dessert. "Of course she did," I said, taking the bakery box without looking at her. "You both hungry?" She grinned, all teeth and charm. Starving, we sat, me at the head, Noah on my right, Rosa across, 2 empty seats for neighbors I said might drop by. Kaplan was already waiting 2 houses down, phone in hand. I poured apple cider from the pitcher, not whiskey, though the identical bottle sat right beside me on the table. "To family," I said, lifting my glass. "And to honesty." Evan clinked his glass against mine, eyes locked on the bottle. He was waiting for me to open it. I didn't. Instead, I smiled and asked Bree to pass the potatoes. Her bracelet jingled, small butterflies. I noticed her wrist trembled. Halfway through dinner, the oven timer dinged, just once, short and sharp. It wasn't for food. It was my signal. I stood, wiped my hands on the apron and walked to the counter. "Before dessert, there's something I need to show you both." I lifted the gifted bottle from its bag and set it gently in the middle of the table. "That's the one we gave you," Evan said, smiling nervously. "Yeah," I said. "It's been sitting in my cupboard since you brought it." "I wanted to make sure it was safe," Bree laughed, the kind of laugh people do when their throat tightens. "Safe? It's whiskey, not nitroglycerin." "Maybe," I said, turning the bottle under the light. "But see here." I clicked Rosa's blacklight pen and shone it across the cap seam. A faint bluish glow bloomed along the edge. "That's what residue looks like when a seal's been tampered with." Rosa leaned in. "That's not manufacturer glue," she said calmly. "Someone resealed this by hand." Bree's smile cracked. "You're imagining things." "Am I?" I slid a paper across the table. Bay State Diagnostics Lab report. "They tested it. Found ethanol and zolpidem, a sedative. I didn't drink it because of this." I lifted my phone and played Noah's saved text through the speaker. "Grandpa, don't drink it." The room went still. Evan swallowed hard. "Dad, what the hell is this?" "This," I said, "is proof." I reached into my folder and laid down the pharmacy stub Mr. Duffy had printed for me. "Cash purchase, Nov 16, 5:42 p.m., 2 boxes of zolpidem. Discount card registered to B. Tisdale." I looked at Bree's wrist again. "The same day, same tattoo," her lips parted. "You can't prove that's mine." "I don't need to." I slid another document across the table, a healthcare proxy with my forged signature. "You dropped this under my mat, Bree. The Ring camera saw you." "Heard you too." Evan's chair creaked. "What is this?" He picked it up, scanning the lines until his own name stopped him cold. "Bree, what? Don't you turn this on me," she hissed, her voice breaking. "You said—" "Stop," I said, raising my hand. "You've both said enough." Then I looked toward the door and said, "Mr. Kaplan?" It opened a second later. My lawyer stepped in, calm as a judge. "Good evening, everyone." He set his briefcase down, pulled out a business card, and placed it beside the proxy. "This document," he said evenly, "is a felony forgery." My client has video evidence, purchase logs, and corroboration from a pharmacist and a minor witness. Evans stood, red-faced. You're insane! You're both insane! I didn't move. I just reached for the remote and pressed play on the Ring video. Bree's voice filled the room. He'll drink it at dinner. The silence after was long enough to hear the clock tick. Kaplan didn't raise his voice. Here's what happens next, he said. You both sign this agreement, stating you will not contact Mr. O'Rourke or any of his financial institutions without counsel, or we go directly to law enforcement with the packet and the footage. Evans' chest heaved. You'd ruin your own son? I looked him dead in the eye. You tried to ruin me first. He looked at Bree, then at the forged proxy, then at the glowing bottle under the blacklight. His lips quivered. Finally, he said, "Give me the pen," he signed. Bree followed, her signature small and trembling. Kaplan gathered the papers, slid them into a folder, and handed me my copy. "That'll do for tonight," he said quietly. "We'll finalize the filings in the morning." Noah reached for my hand under the table. His palm was warm, steady. I realized I'd been holding my breath. When Kaplan left, Bree stood abruptly. "You'll regret this," she spat. "Family doesn't take family to court." I looked at her, then at Evan. "You're right," I said. "But family doesn't poison each other either." They walked out without another word. The sound of the front door closing was heavier than any gunshot I've ever imagined. Rosa stayed seated, eyes wide but calm. "You okay, Jack?" I nodded. "Yeah," I said. "For the first time in weeks, I think I am." She poured herself another glass of cider. "You want to tell the neighbors what just happened?" "Not yet," I said, staring at the glowing seam of the bottle. "Let the papers do the talking tomorrow." Noah leaned against my shoulder. "You think Dad will hate me for telling?" I turned to him. "He might for a while, but one day he'll remember that you told the truth. That's what men do, even when it hurts." He nodded. We sat in silence, the three of us, while snow began to fall against the window. The oven fan hummed softly, the house breathing easy again. Before I turned off the light, I placed the forged proxy, the lab report, and the bottle into Kaplan's folder. Justice was already in motion, but peace, that would take a little longer. Still, as I closed the door to my dining room, I whispered into the empty air, "Good night, May. I did the work, and for the first time since she died, I slept through the night." Monday, December 23rd, 9:00 a.m. Boston was wrapped in frost and quiet. The world looked cleaner than it deserved to. I put on my wool coat, tucked Kaplan's folder under my arm, and stepped out into the kind of cold that clarifies your thoughts. The truth had been served. Now came the part where paperwork made it real. When I reached BPD District C11, the station smelled like coffee and salt. Kaplan was already there, tie straight, eyes bright behind his glasses.
"You ready?"
he asked. "I've been ready since the night he brought that bottle. We filed a criminal complaint, attempted poisoning and forgery, with every scrap of evidence labeled and ordered. The lab report, the ring clip, the proxy, the pharmacy stub. The detective on duty, a broad-shouldered man named Sergeant Latham, listened without interrupting, flipping through the folder as I spoke. When I finished, he nodded slowly. "Clean chain of custody," he said. "You did half our job for us, Mr. O'Rourke." He wrote down the case number on a yellow card and slid it to me. "We'll start with interviews," he said. "We'll take the bottle into evidence." He handed me a property receipt, crisp as new money. I folded it into my notebook. Another entry, another proof. By 10:30 a.m., Kaplan and I were at Eastern Harbor Credit Union again. Ms. Lynn greeted me with that same quiet empathy reserved for people who've seen the worst of their families. "Mr. O'Rourke," she said, "we received your lawyer's notice." She brought up my account on the screen, stamped every page of the file with a red word that looked like victory. Frozen, Evan and Bree's names now lived under a new column. No contact parties. The pending HELOC application that started this whole nightmare was officially null. "They can't touch a cent," Ms. Lynn said softly. "Not unless you lift the freeze, and I wouldn't recommend it." I smiled, small and tired. Neither would I. On December 27th, Kaplan filed the amendments to my living trust. He read them aloud in his office while snow fell thick outside the window. Noah O'Rourke's Education Fund full beneficiary. May O'Rourke Scholarship at Madison Park. Technical initial deposit $25,000. Evan O'Rourke Conditional inheritance. Employees payable only upon completion of therapy and full restitution of unauthorized withdrawals, totaling $12,400. He handed me the pen. I signed slowly, carefully, as if each stroke sealed a wound. We also filed a petition for a protective order barring Evan and Bree from contacting me or handling my finances through 2026. Kaplan smiled faintly. It's poetic, he said. 3 years of peace. 2 days later, BPD called. They'd already interviewed Mr. Duffy and the Somerville store manager. Both statements matched mine exactly. No embellishments, no confusion. Looks like your instincts were right, sir, Sergeant Latham said over the phone. We'll keep you updated. That night I sat by the window watching the lights on the neighbors' trees. Every house seemed to glow with families that hadn't imploded. But for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel bitterness. Just relief. The next morning, December 29th, my phone buzzed with a message from Evan. Dad, please. We need to talk. Bree's gone. I didn't know it would go that far. I stared at the screen for a long time. Kaplan's voice echoed in my head. Do not reply. The order protects you, but only if you let it. I deleted the message. Then I texted Noah, tree's still up. Come put the angel on top for your grandma. He came over that evening. We stood in front of the small artificial tree, and he placed May's crystal angel on the top branch. When he stepped back, I saw his mother's eyes in him, clear, steady, unflinching. Grandpa, he said, are you happy it's over? I thought about it. Happy isn't the word, I said. But I'm finally safe in my own house. That counts for something, neighbors whispered, of course. Word spreads in Dorchester faster than snow melts. But I didn't care. I fixed the loose porch light, salted the steps, kept the mailbox tidy. Justice doesn't arrive with sirens or applause. It comes on quiet mornings, through stamped papers and steady hands. It comes when you can finally lock your own door and trust that the key in your pocket still means yours. The world outside was still cold, but inside the air felt lighter. The house didn't hum with fear anymore. It hummed with proof, and I slept, not like a man who'd won, but like one who'd stopped losing. January 7th, Boston was buried under fresh snow when Kaplan called. They've agreed to mediation, he said. His tone was calm, but I heard the satisfaction underneath. Back Bay, conference suite tomorrow morning. It's not a trial, but it's formal. They'll have counsel. I ironed my shirt for the first time since May's funeral. The fabric still held the faint smell of her detergent, lavender and starch. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't see a victim. I saw a man who'd built his life with tools, not tricks. The next morning, the city felt muffled, like the world itself was holding its breath. The conference room was long and sterile. Fluorescent lights, neutral carpet, a table too polished to feel human. Evan sat at one end, Bree beside him, smaller than I remembered, her eyes swollen from whatever nights came before. Their lawyer leaned close, whispering. Kaplan and I sat opposite, notebooks open, folders aligned like chess pieces. The mediator, a grey-haired woman with a voice made of calm steel, started with the basics. This session concerns allegations of attempted poisoning, financial fraud, and document forgery. The goal is a settlement that protects Mr. O'Rourke and resolves the financial harm. Evan looked up finally, eyes bloodshot. Dad, he said, voice cracking. I didn't mean for it to get this far. Bree said it would just make you sleep. That's all? Bree flinched. Don't put this on me, she snapped, then turned to the mediator. We didn't poison anyone. We made mistakes. Kaplan leaned forward, his voice low and steady. Intent is smoke, he said. Results are fire. He slid a copy of the police case number across the table, followed by the bank's fraud log and the lab report highlighted in yellow. My client doesn't need your apology. He needs accountability. The mediator folded her hands. Mr. O'Rourke, what outcome do you seek? I looked at my son. His expensive coat, his hollowed face, the man I'd once taught to change a fuse. Boundaries that hold, I said. and restitution for what was taken, $1,200 in unauthorized withdrawals. But more than that, I want a written apology to Noah for pulling him into this. He told the truth when you both didn't. Evan's lip trembled. Bree whispered something sharp, but he cut her off. We'll pay it back, he muttered. Kaplan slid a document across the table. Restitution agreement. O'Rourke v. O'Rourke and Tisdale. It required monthly payments into the May O'Rourke Scholarship Fund. A written apology to Noah, notarized and filed. Commitment to counseling and financial restitution within 12 months. Failure meant immediate civil suit and full cooperation with criminal prosecution. The mediator read it aloud, slow and deliberate. Do you both understand? Evan nodded first, then Bree, tears streaking her foundation. We never meant, she started. I stopped her. You meant to help yourselves. That's all that matters. The pen scratched across the paper, each signature loud in the sterile air. For the first time in months, I felt something settle inside me. Not joy, not triumph, just stillness. When it was done, the mediator closed the folder as if sealing a casket. This agreement is binding, she said. All parties are free to go. Outside, snow was falling again, fat flakes catching the light of the street lamps. Evan and Bree hurried into their car without looking back. Kaplan and I walked in silence until he said, Not every man your age would have handled it this way. I didn't handle it, I said. I survived it, he smiled faintly. That's handling it. That night I made soup and carried a bowl next door to Rosa. She opened the door in her robe and laughed softly. You look 10 years younger, she said. Maybe justice shaves a few off, I told her. When I got home, I called Mr. Duffy. He was closing up shop. Just wanted to say thanks, I told him. If not for your record-keeping, I might have never known. Happy to help, he said. That's what neighbors do, even the ones who sell pills for a living. We both laughed. Later, I texted Noah a photo of the signed agreement. He replied, Proud of you, Grandpa. Grandma would be too. Snow kept falling outside, blanketing the porch, the yard, the street where it all began. Justice, I realized, isn't loud or quick. It's patient. It's a man taking back his life, one receipt. One signature, one truth at a time, and tonight I could finally breathe without checking the locks. March. The snow was gone, the gutters dripping again, and the sun hung just long enough each afternoon to make the house smell like spring. I was in the kitchen, humming some old tune May used to play on her radio. When the mail slot clanked, a thick, glossy mailer slid onto the rug, bright letters spelling Sleep Blend, Sweet Dreams by Bree Tisdale. The irony nearly made me laugh out loud. I picked it up, turned it over. A photo of Bree smiling, holding a bottle that looked just like the one she'd nearly killed me with, only smaller, labeled Natural Relaxation Drops. There wasn't even a return address, just her name, her new brand. I stared at it for a while, then set it gently on the table. For a moment the house went quiet again, same quiet that used to scare me. Then I chuckled, slow and low. You just don't quit, do you? I took the kettle off the stove, filled my mug with my own loose-leaf tea, black, honest, unsweetened, and sipped. The warmth settled deep. Then I folded the mailer in half, once, twice, slid it into the trash and patted the lid closed. Not this time, I said. Not ever again. That evening Noah stopped by after school. His backpack looked heavier than usual, his face pink from the cold. Grandpa, he said, dropping it on the floor, Mom says Dad's been going to counseling. I nodded slowly. That's good. Every man's got to face his own mess eventually. He eyed the mailer sticking out of the trash. That from her? Yeah, but I already threw it away. He smiled faintly. I'm good. Then he said, Grandma's recipe still on the fridge? I turned to the yellowed card, pinned there with a magnet shaped like a bluebird. Rosemary chicken, 1 lemon, 2 cloves garlic, a handful of patience. I'd memorized it long ago, but I still read it every time I cooked. We made it together that night, Noah chopping while I seasoned. The smell filled every corner of the house. When the oven timer dinged, I almost expected May to walk in from the porch, wiping her hands on her apron, asking what all the fuss was about. Instead, the front door opened, and Rosa stepped in, wrapped in her thick coat. I smelled dinner from next door, she said, grinning. You boys cooking for an army? Just the good ones, I said. She laughed and helped set the table. May's blue rim plates polished to a shine. We laid 3 settings for ourselves and 2 extra plates, just like the night of the showdown. But this time there was no fear, only the hum of life going on. After dinner, Kaplan stopped by, still in his suit, carrying a pie from the bakery near Copley. Peace offering, he said. You've earned a sweet ending. We poured cider instead of whiskey. Rosa raised her glass first. To truth, she said, I added. To everyone who kept watch. And Noah, cheeks flushed, finished it. And to telling the truth early. The clink of glasses was small but final. Like the last hammer tap on a finished build. For a while, we just ate pie and talked about nothing. About Rosa's patients, Kaplan's cases, Noah's grades. The kind of talk you don't realize you've missed until you have it again. When they left, I stood on the porch, watching the streetlights blink on one by one. The air smelled of salt and thawing earth. Inside, my phone buzzed, a notification from the May O'Rourke Scholarship Fund. Payment received, $400. E. O'Rourke. I smiled. Not forgiveness, not pity, just quiet acceptance. He was doing the work. Maybe because of guilt, maybe because of grace. Either way, it meant the story hadn't ended where it almost did. I looked toward the night sky, where the clouds were breaking apart, and said softly, You see that, May? He's learning. The wind rattled the windows like her laugh. I turned off the lights, set the tea mug in the sink, and paused by the table one last time. There was nothing left on it now. No bottles, no papers, no ghosts. Just a few crumbs from the pie, and a house that finally felt like mine again. Before bed, I wrote one final line in my notebook. You didn't lose me, son. You gave me away. And I took myself back. I capped my pen, closed the book, and placed it beside May's picture. For the first time in a long while, I didn't check the locks. I just slept, deep, clean, and unafraid. YouTube description, senior true revenge audience style. He said it was a gift. A bottle of fine whiskey from my own son, handed to me like peace after months of silence. But that same night, my grandson sent 5 words that froze my heart. Grandpa, don't drink it. What followed was a storm of betrayal, forged papers, hidden drugs, and one old man's fight to prove the truth before it was too late. In this real-life style confession, I reveal how I turned grief into grit and how justice finally came. Not from violence, but from proof. If you've ever been underestimated, betrayed by family, or told you're too old to fight back, this story is for you. Tell me in the comments, have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted? Your story might help someone who's still finding their courage. Subscribe for more sweet revenge-style confessions of truth, justice, and second chances. Listen till the end, because sometimes revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting free.